Okay, so one of the things I'm going to talk about this afternoon, is gamification. There's actually already been a few examples of gamification in terms of some of the abstracts. Some of my colleagues have a poster number 60, which is an adaptation of the Monopoly game called Pharmacist. That's been developed and trialled up at Strathclyde. Gamification in its simplest form is trying to use some sort of play-based activities to try and consolidate some learning. So I want to take you through this game that we've developed, and we've called it Pharmacist's Dilemma, and we will be playing this game as I suggested. So on the MPharm course in Civs, one of my responsibilities is to teach quality assurance. This is the setting part of this, and one of the lectures that I've got to do is what we call the external interface, and that's looking at how the quality management tools that you deal with in terms of different players along the pharmaceutical supply chain, so between different manufacturers and between manufacturers and distributors and so on. And part of the challenge is it's quite a dry lecture. It covers things like outsourcing, technical agreements, contracts, and audits as well. So it's not actually a very exciting lecture. So part of the aim of this game, Pharmacist's Dilemma, was to try and get some kind of in-lecture activity going to show the transactional choices that organisations within a pharmaceutical supply chain will face. There were two other important things that I wanted to do with this game. We wanted to try and evaluate and show how quality management tools would have an impact on those transactional choices, but we also wanted to monitor the effectiveness of the game as a teaching tool as well. So the basis of the game is the principle behind it is quite a famous game theory, negative sum game theory game called The Prisoner's Dilemma. You might have come across it as before. That's where you've got two prisoners, they're kept in separate rooms, and they've made a prior agreement that they won't grass each other up. If they stick to their original agreement, they both get -1, they both get a year in jail. If they both betray each other, they both get 2 years in jail. But where it gets more interesting, and this is where the game theory is really involved, is that if one betrays the other, the betrayer goes free and the betrayed gets 3 years. So this is quite a famous thought experiment. So what we developed instead was a similar negative sum game called the Pharmacist's Dilemma. And if you have one of the little strips of paper, you'll see that it's got three little capsules with +1 on it, and it's got one capsule with a -4. And if you have one of those strips of paper, if you could tear them into 4 separate pieces just now. And I'll go through the general rules of the game while you're doing that. Okay, so this is actually the slide that we use in the lecture, okay? So all students are to consider that they are part of a pharmaceutical supply chain, and so they should not pass on negative material. It's a negative sum game, so all students in the class have failing hands to start off with. And you can tell that by the count of points that you've got in your hand. You've got +3 and a -4. Each of the +1 is a successful batch of material that you hold. The -4 is a batch that has, for whatever reason, has failed. You've paid all of the cost, but you're not supposed to get any of the reward from it. You win the game at the end by having a total score of greater than 0. If you have a score of 0, which I think would almost be impossible for this game, you stay in business, but only just. And if you have a score less than 1, you are out of business. So, your Pharmacist's Dilemma, the dilemma that the class has, is do you supply properly, so you supply always +1 material and lose the game, or do you cheat and win? And the next question will be, what are the other people around about you going to do? So, we're going to have 3 swaps in this game. And so, what I'd like you to do for the first swap is see if you can get in a little group somewhere and put in the little tab that you want to get rid of. Okay? In that little group, you put the tab face down so no one knows what you've put into the group. and then you mix the tabs up so nobody can follow. Now what this is a mimic of, this is a mimic of a pharmaceutical supply chain that's got no traceability and no accountability. So if you decide to put a negative 4 in, nobody's going to know, and I'll give you 20 seconds to do that, if you can find groups around about you. If you're only in a 2, don't play this stage of the game because there'll be a lack of trust. But if you are in a small group, see if you can trade. Okay, just another 5 seconds and then I'll get on to the next slide. Okay, so swap number 2. Now this is actually in the lecture, there's usually a bit of a gap between these. But so swap number 2, what this is a mimic of is technical agreements and a chain of accountability. So this time I'd like you to find an individual to swap with. Ask them what tab they are going to give you. That's traceability, because you know who the individual is going to be, and you will have an informal contract, a bit like a technical agreement. Put the tab face down on the table and pick up the other person's tab. Remember, if you cheat someone, they'll know who it is. So if you do that just now, I'll give you 20 seconds.
So what, I can lie about what I put down?
Yeah.
What? Right, okay, right. So what you put down?
Okay, just another 5 seconds. Okay, swap number 3 coming up. Okay, so this is to mimic the fact that across the pharmaceutical supply chain you can audit a supplier or a manufacturer. This time, find the individual that you want to swap with and show them the other tabs that are in your hand. Now, if you see someone and you don't like the look of their hand, go away and find someone else. Okay, so you have the traceability, you have the informal contract, and now you get to audit your supplier. I'll give you 20 seconds to do that. Okay, 5 seconds. Okay, so these are the results that we actually got from a class. The registered size of the class was about 140 students. This is based on a survey that there were 50 that responded to the survey via Kahoot. So you can see on the far left-hand side what quality management system you are using, whether there's none, whether there's a technical agreement, or whether there's a technical agreement plus an audit. In the second column, you can see what the game mimic was. So that was your first swap, your second swap, and your third swap. And thankfully, we get the right behaviour. So you can see in that anonymous blind trade environment, nearly 52% of the students are trying to trade the negative 4. So they're actually trying to game the system with a lack of trust to make sure they get the best hand. Going further down, you can see that the number of students trying to trade a negative 4 falls to 23%. Interestingly enough, it then rises to 27% for the final game. And what I think that is the students know this is the final swap, and so if they don't get rid of that -4 that they've got in their hand, then they're going to lose the game. But one of the things that's really important to me is that I think I like to design my games and my activities with some form of evaluation stage within it. I think we can be very prone to have great ideas about new teaching activities or new teaching ideas, but for me the important thing is to actually get some solid objective data that tells us whether the idea that we've had is actually fit for purpose. So this was the final question: does this game illustrate the external principles? And in this case, the external principles is a discussion about the interface between the two players within the pharmaceutical supply chain. And you can see that either yes or definitely yes is 57%. Now, I actually thought it was going to be a bit higher than that, so I definitely want to go through another cycle of improvement for this. And so this is where I see the future development of this game going. It could well be that we try and reset the hand so that everyone has got the same hand to start off with. We could allow QC testing at random, so before you pick it up, if your name begins with the first half of the alphabet, you can look at the tablet before you accept it. Interestingly enough, can we mimic a product recall through this? Product recall would be almost impossible in that anonymous supply chain, which is fine. That's a principle that we're trying to get across. Really interested in the idea of enhanced discussions. So can students predict the outcome? Can they develop new tools that they might use to improve the QA within this supply chain? And actually an enhanced discussion with the students to look at and to analyse the data. Okay, so the final slide is the cleaner's dilemma. You've all got 4 little bits of paper. If we could pass the cups back round so that the paper doesn't end up on the floor, with the cleaner's hand to sort it out, or the people who floor for. Finally, I'd like to thank my co-authors. I'd like to thank the sponsors for inviting me to speak, and Natalie as well for taking a look at the abstract. Thank you. Any questions? This takes place in a 1-hour lecture. If moving forward, I'd potentially even use this as an opportunity for flipping the classroom. So I'd be really interested in trying to roll the game out and then seeing if the students can come up with the audits, the technical agreements and QC testing under their own steam in terms of understanding aspects of quality. I could then put the proper names to it. They might even come up with a better idea that our entire ICH regulatory framework have not actually thought of, and I think that would be really exciting. Not the first year I did it. I think I kind of use it as a promo in the second year to sort of say, come along to my lecture, it'll be fun, we're going to play a game. I think when they see QA and the external interface, they all go, oh no. So I kind of use it as a little bit of a, yeah, this will be fun, it'll be interactive, we'll be playing a game. And by that point, the class kind of know my kind of wacky side. My understanding is that Kahoot Free has a maximum of 50. We do use Ombia in the department, and I think some of the other departments are using Mentimeter as well. I think rolling forward, I would like to be able to get a larger cohort. So I think I'm already beginning to exceed the Kahoot limit. It was just a technology that I was very familiar with, using in a smaller kind of master's class, but I think I'm already beginning to push that technology limit, so I would have to expand it. Any in-lecture assessment system would be absolutely fine. It's just a mechanism to get students to interact, gather the data, and then reflect the data back about how useful these quality management system tools are in securing the quality of the supply chain going forward. Thank you very much.